36 is an extension of lesson 35 where we learn about the past narrative conjugation. In lesson 36 we learn about the past narrative form of vyhy, the to be verb. Here we see it, vyhy. This is pronounced with 3 syllables, vyhy. When we see a vav on the front of a word, oftentimes it gets its own syllable. So vyhy. The form vyhy, the third masculine past narrative form of vyhy, so notice this is third masculine singular past narrative of vyhy, is extremely frequent. We see it all over the place. There are 2 distinct functions of this form in narrative. We're going to take a look at those. Often vyhy simply has the meaning of was, became, or came. Let's take a look at some examples. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. Here's our adjective modifying ish, man. So, and the Lord was with Joseph, and he, Joseph, we're talking about Joseph here, and he became a successful man. So we have 3 options here, was, became, or came. And in this verse, in Genesis 32 or 39 verse 2, we have 2 of those options being used. So we're just going to have to figure out based on context which option is best. So Joseph was, or the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. Let's look at 1 Samuel 15:10. Vyhi devar Adonai el Shemuel, and the word of the Lord came. So the Yahi is being translated as came here, unto Shemuel. So the word of the Lord is the subject. Here's our verb. So the word of the Lord came unto Shemuel. So between these 2 verses, we see the 3 different main ways that vyhy can be translated. But it also has a different function within past narratives. Frequently, however, the form simply marks past tense at the opening of a narrative. So we'll see in all 3 of these examples that we have this phrase set apart from the rest of the verse. So, and it was, and it was, and it was. All of this, and it was, is coming from vyhy. Let's take a look. Vyhy be'et hahi vayomer Avimelech. And it was in the time, that time. So he is that one. And it was in that time. And Abimelech said. So that gets smoothed out in English as, and it was at about that time Abimelech said. All that vyhy is doing is setting up the story in the past for us. So this is just marking the story as a past tense story, setting it up, saying, here is a past tense story, let's take a look. And then the story begins after that. So it's not connected to what follows it syntactically speaking. So it gets set apart. Let's look at a couple more examples. Vyhi achar hadavarim ha'eleh Elohim nisa et Abraham. And it was after these things, and God tested Abraham. Notice both of these verses have 2 clauses that are separated by a vav, here and here. One is subordinate to the main clause, and in English oftentimes we'll just get rid of the conjunction separating the 2 and put them together. So after these things, God tested Abraham. We probably should put a comma here in English. At about that time, comma, Abimelech said. After these things, comma, God tested Abraham. That's what this vav is doing, essentially. Since Hebrew doesn't have any punctuation, Hebrew will often use the conjunction vav as a way to separate clauses. And in English, we would put a piece of punctuation called the comma in these places instead of translating it as and. Let's look at one more example of vyhy being used to set up the past tense of a story. Vyhy acharei mot Avraham, Vayavarek Elohim et Yitzchak bano, Vayeshev Yitzchak im Be'er Lacha Roi. And it was after the death of Abraham, and God blessed Isaac, his son. So this is Abraham's son, of course. And Isaac settled near, so im is being translated as near here, Be'er Lacha Roi. Here we have a place name. This is a place name. So near the well, Be'er is probably well, to the life of seeing or something. It's kind of a complicated name here, but it is just a place name. So this is where Yitzchak settled. But Vyhy simply sets up this story telling us that it's in the past tense and that what follows it is a story. So we'll just translate and it was, and then put a dash like we have here, or a comma or something like that, maybe even a colon, after the death of Abraham. Notice this conjunction vav shows up again, just like in the other examples. Here, our authors give us that comma that I was looking for earlier. After the death of Abraham, comma, God blessed Isaac, his son. Notice that this is a past conjugation verb, vav patak. We don't have a doubling in here. The dagesh is not in the yod, and I'll ask you why, and then I hope you'll say because it's a PL. How do we know it's a PL? Well, we look for a dagesh in the second radical. There's no dagesh there because resh is a guttural, so there's no dagesh there, and that's why we have some unexpected vowels. Kind of hard to tell that this is a PL, but one clue is the shava underneath the yod and the lack of dagesh in the yod, because this is a past narrative. We have another past narrative verb down here, and that's everything we expect: the vav, the patak, the dagesh, in the imperfect marking, that yod here. The yut, the yod is the third masculine singular prefix for the imperfect. And then we put the vav, the patak, and the dagesh there, and it becomes a past narrative conjugation verb. So here in lesson 36, we learn about vyhy, and it's the two ways that it can be used. One is to simply add the meaning of was, became, or came, and this is the verb of the clause. And the other one is to introduce a past narrative story, and it is not the verb of the following clause. We need to find a verb somewhere else in the clause, because this is just set apart all by itself, syntactically speaking. So that's why we have this dash here. So vyhy is the past narrative form of haya, and it is very common, and we learn about it in lesson 36.